everyone, welcome to Notier's Frontiers Diaries, and today we're in Uganda. This is where we started out the pandemic over a year ago. We lived here for 7 months as the borders closed around us, and then we lived in Kenya for the past 6 months, and now we are back.
Full circle.
Our journey back from Kenya was pretty interesting, especially now during the pandemic times. Crossing borders is more difficult than ever, but it was also a really beautiful journey.
When Marissa says interesting, I would substitute that word with difficult.
Yeah.
There were a couple things that we needed to get done in order to drive to the border itself. Kenya was experiencing some high spiked rates in 5 counties in particular.
Yeah, they went under a lockdown, and so you technically weren't allowed to cross those county borders without some government permission. We were getting a negative PCR test anyway because we were going to cross the border into Uganda, but so that really
valid
helped.
For about 90 hours, and so there's a clock that starts ticking as soon as you get your nose swabbed.
Yeah.
And on a motorcycle, we were 2 days away from the border. We had to go through a couple different checkpoints where they would just check our negative tests.
It was a really pretty drive, though.
It was beautiful. Thank you for everything. Thank you.
We started in Nanyuki and
right next to Mount Kenya, which is amazing,
we got
on
to pass Mount Kenya.
Western side of Mount Kenya.
That is the largest mountain in Kenya, and it's kind of like Kilimanjaro in that it's an old volcano that just kind of comes out of the earth. There's no like mountain range around it.
But as far as Kilimanjaro is kind of an abrupt peak, right? Or without a peak.
It's like a Sugarloaf mound, I feel like.
It's like, I'm going to say a dot. One of those colorful candies. So it looks like just a little, you know what I'm talking about?
No.
No idea? It looks like, yes, a little mound. It doesn't have your Hershey Kiss type peak. It has, a more flattened off top. Whereas Mount Kenya it's got a multitude of jagged peaks that,
so cool.
are very beautiful to look at on sunny days when you're walking down
and
the
there's
street.
snow at the very top of it, which is amazing because it's right on the equator. And in fact, in this journey, we crossed the equator 3 times just in
From
one day.
Nanyuki to
Kisumu. We went to
Kisumu.
that night.
The border, the equator's right here. We started off just like, I think 5 miles north of the equator.
Yeah, we could walk there from our house in Nanyuki.
We went south, and then we went a little bit further west, crossed up over by the Great Rift Valley.
Oh, that was amazing. I mean, the Great Rift Valley is huge. It's not quite like the Grand Canyon where you can stand on the edge of it, but you definitely do see kind of like the steps, the layering of the landscape as it goes down, and then you kind of come up on the other side. In Kenya, there's actually this big chasm that's forming now in the earth where the 2 tectonic plates are separating slowly. And that is what creates the Great Rift Valley. So that's really nice to ride through. The roads are pretty good. It's paved for the most part.
Anytime you get anywhere close to any city, traffic on a big motorcycle like mine is just insane. That's where some of the first difficulties started. I mean, we left Nanyuki. We had the beautiful views of Mount Kenya. We went down this small road and we saw rhinos in the distance.
There were rhinos.
Which was amazing as a good farewell to us.
Amazing.
And then we hit some traffic that is like kamikaze drivers. You know, I've complained in the past before about Peruvian drivers, but I do believe that in South America, drivers are more sparse, and so there's not as much traffic, as bad as it can be when you're in Lima and you know, nearing Cusco. But here in Africa, it seems like there's just more traffic. And
it's really populated here.
Yeah, equally if not worse driving abilities. And motorcycles are, you get out of my way, you go on the side of the road, you drive on the shoulder. But the motorcycles they're used to are these small piki-pikis.
Yeah, they call them piki-pikis. Boda-bodas are the ones that are like public transportation. But piki-pikis, I mean, they're all small, tiny motorcycles.
They're all tiny, like 125cc, little Chinese. Some of them are called Simbas, other one, like, you know.
Yeah, like
but,
Great Lion.
Yeah, they all have, yeah, they're, you know, they're decked out in stickers. But having a big motorcycle like this, with wide panniers on it, trying to navigate through the same traffic system of larger vehicles like the vans and the buses and the cars, and then these tiny vehicles, the piki-pikis, that weave in and out of just about everything freely. We are an object that usually does not exist in this universe, and so
yeah, they see us as a motorcycle, and they see us as a small motorcycle.
Yeah.
And they should be seeing us as a very large, fast motorcycle.
Yeah.
That has to really hit the brakes when they are coming right at us in oncoming traffic.
It's frustrating to.
Also, a lot of semi-trucks use these roads. So, I mean, they're the main thoroughfares.
And semi-trucks will overtake other semi-trucks that are overtaking yet another semi-truck, leaving a motorcycle, you know, a square inch of actual road. And what do? You throw on the brakes and you pull over. You might give them a customary finger, but
we were really lucky with the weather because it was such a nice day. We did ride through one small rainstorm. This is the large rainy season, and you can just expect rainstorms to happen at any time of year out here. But the rest of the day was really nice because when you have to slam on your brakes like that and it's raining.
And bonus fact that we didn't even bring up, on the way from the Nuki,
yeah.
My bike had been parked for so long, some air bubble had gotten somewhere in the line, and I didn't have rear brakes. I had to like pump them like 4 times for them to have any type of use. You know, and then the air bubble would take back over. I don't know the physics behind it, but as soon as you utilize your brakes and you let it go, you have to start the whole pumping process again to get back to brakes. And this is all while, you know, cars are coming head on to you and you're trying to weave around traffic.
He's just telling me over the intercom that we have on our helmets, like, I don't think we have any rear brakes.
It wasn't a thing, it said don't freak out, but we don't have rear brakes. And yeah, so that was, you know, added surely to, you know, some of the difficulties of the day.
But we made it, thanks
to
Tim's wonderful driving skills. So while at the border, we came across some difficulties, of course. They are expected in all of these African borders.
Yeah, there's new paperwork in this, you know, these times of the pandemic. You know, you're supposed to have a nose swab that confirms
PCR test
that, you know, it shows that you are not sick. It usually in standard times there's official paperwork is stamped. But in times of COVID, they don't want everybody going to Nairobi to all huddle around some lady who sits there with a stamp. And so that process was foregone.
Yeah, it was turned into an online process. I mean, basically what happens during the pandemic is all the rules get thrown out the window and there are new rules put into place and nobody knows what's going on.
Government websites.
We didn't have the right stamps because they don't do the right stamps anymore, and it was just a bit of a disaster.
Yeah, it boils down to how friendly is the officer you are dealing with, and
That's
how
correct.
patient are you, and how patient is he. And when it comes to me, the patience level is, you know, here's center frame camera. You can't. It's still going down. It's out of frame, but I'm way down here, and so
doesn't have a lot of patience.
I don't have a lot of patience, but after. You know, I try to get things done correctly and I stand by, you know, who I am and what I've tried to, you know, to do officially, to be there legally and to present myself, you know, as I should. But after I present my case to the judge, if you will, as best I can, and I'm not getting anywhere, I send in Marisa, the enforcer.
Well, we just have different tactics. Like, I think it's kind of like good cop, bad cop. I will just kind of stand there and nod, and even though, you know, we're all wearing masks, just smile and be like, I'm so sorry, and maybe next time I will get this all done correctly. Thank you for explaining it to me.
And this whole time it's a million degrees, and so...
Oh yeah, and of course you're
I'm
in
stressed.
Your riding gear.
I have the basic paperwork I need. I have my passport. It says that I came in and I'm leaving in the next amount of time. I have my title for my vehicle. I have the insurance for my vehicle. I have the TIP for the vehicle, and I have my negative test. With those 5 things, that makes me legal to exit and enter another country. And
One would think.
One would think. And after you show those 5 pieces of documents, and when they say, oh, well, we have 3 problems, let me begin with the first one. And they speak nice and slow, and you're like, you know, but long and short, yeah, I get A, hot-headed, and B, in the heat.
Literally hot.
It's insane. And the last thing you want to do is argue with an official. You know, I don't like arguing with anybody. You know, as much as I like to stand by my point, it's kind of like the oncoming traffic in Chicken. If I don't concede, something awful happens, and so you know,
and most likely to you, they will be fine because they're a giant semi-truck, and this is an official border guard, and so it's completely up to their discretion. So we just try to be as nice as possible, and I think after, what was it, over 4 hours?
4 hours.
We got through, and we were so thankful. So luckily the rest of our day wasn't too long. We just had an easy ride over to Jinja, which is a beautiful town on the shores of Lake Victoria. I think Lake Victoria is Africa's largest lake.
Looks on the map, it's huge.
It is huge. It's really remarkable. And Jinja is the beginning of the Nile River, they say. I don't know if it's the White Nile or Blue Nile, but it's the beginning of some Nile, and which eventually becomes the Nile that we know. And so that's kind of cool. It's also very tropical there, just because the elevation is a lot lower than these other places that we were, especially in Nanyuki in Kenya, where we were living.
It was perfect. It was at a high altitude, but directly on the equator, and so the effects of cold that are usually, you know, go with high altitude were
kind of counterbalanced by the equatorial sun.
Exactly.
So it'd be a little chilly in the mornings, which is
perfect
kind of
for me. I run much hotter than Marisa.
Yes,
so
that was a little chilly. I did like to have my jackets, but then during the day, you know, you just have to avoid the sun because the sun can be brutal. Not only is it high altitude and you're that much closer to the sun, but it's equatorial sun. So people of our complexion really have to get out of the sun in about 10 minutes.
The same thing. It wasn't, you know, in Peru, you know, and it wasn't even directly on the equator, but just being so high up in the Andes, and it's cold, and, you know, and it's kind of even overcast, and so you're not thinking, oh, I might get a sunburn.
Exactly.
But bam, you know, you just lobster
even
up.
under your helmet visor. I mean, I would get red cheeks, and my lips would get chapped.
Cool scuba diver mask sunburns going on.
So yeah, Jinja is a lot more tropical feeling, and so it was really nice for us to go there that evening just after such a horrible day. We were looking for a place to relax. We don't book a hotel usually before we just arrive and start scoping out places.
I'll dot a couple on my, you know, on my online maps, or my offline maps I should say, just as target areas. You know, in cities as big as Jinja, you know, there's obviously going to be, you know, a couple options, and so we will go to our little target area and we'll run in and we'll see if the price and the room is nice, and if one is a little off or not to our standards, we'll move on and go, you know, just to check out some other options. And that's what we did. The first place we went to, it was nice. They didn't. The reason why we left is because they didn't accept credit card, and we had just crossed the border and hadn't stopped at an ATM yet, so we had to go ATM hunting anyway, and so we stopped at
the next one. and it was amazing.
It was a resort, and I knew I couldn't afford it because it had a pool. It was really nice. It had, you know, a good infrastructure.
But these are desperate times, and that is one advantage to just pulling up. You know, you have a customer right there, so you might give them a nice offer.
The owner walked up, and I asked him how much his cheapest room was, and he said a very high price. And I said, it is worth that very high price, and I don't want to offend you, but we just can't afford that very high price. And he said, well, what would you pay, you know? And I think there's a difference between what I would like to pay, what I would pay, and what he wants me to pay. And so we kind of met somewhere in the middle, and we got an extremely awesome price for an extremely amazing place. It had a pool.
Oh, we jumped in that pool immediately.
Right away.
It was so nice, especially after such a horrible border. We were so hot all day.
It was a silver lining, if you will, to the day, because it was very tough, it was very hot, and then we found ourselves floating on our backs in a
tropical
pool.
paradise. There were some really freaky spiders there, though.
The spiders were not cool.
No, they were not cool at all.
They were huge. But
yeah, about the size of my hand. I know my hand's not that big, but for a spider, that's really
the legs
not
reached out
cool.
to about those size. The body of the spider was about the size of an adult thumb. Just the body of it, and then the creepy crawly. It was like a banana spider that ran into some Tim Burton fluid. It was not cool.
Mutated.
Yeah.
And the webs. I mean, they were like doorways. Like if you walked into it, you would get caught and you wouldn't be able to
freak
move
out
anywhere.
like a little girl, panic and faint, and just hang there suspended in the web until
I'd have to take a
somebody
sword and
cut
pull
me
them
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were not good.
No, but that place was really, really amazing. And it was a perfect end to those 2 days of coming from Kenya into Uganda. So in our next video, we'll talk about our trip from Jinja to Kampala, which is the capital city of Uganda, where we are now. And I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give us a big thumbs up and hit the subscribe button below. And we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Be safe.